Hello class, this is Professor Bachner, and this tutorial is going to talk about some of the major assignments in CST 110, the informative speech on culture, the group presentation, and the interpersonal communication film paper. Now, all the requirements to these speeches are up on Canvas, and they're pretty self-explanatory, but I do want to go over a couple things quickly. And this will count as our online meeting as well. So I'm going to try to be as brief as possible, but do give you a couple points for each assignment. So first, let's talk about the informative speech on culture. This assignment is basically, I'm on the submission. This assignment is basically, I call it a glorified show and tell. So it's a speech on an object that represents your culture, your cultural identity, and why it's important to you. So let me briefly talk about some of the guidelines on the informative speech on culture. First, it's pick a culture that you strongly identify with. So think about your nationality, your cultural identity, your race, your religion, where you grew up, or organizations that you are a part of. Now, sometimes people say, I really don't know what to talk about. So I say, think about your cultural heritage, think about your nationality, think about some sports that you're involved and passionate with, think about certain workplaces. Some workplaces have really strong organizational culture. And then sometimes think about your hobbies, right? So if you are a gamer, I know there's a gaming culture. If you're a part of like cosplay, there's a cosplay culture, so think about those different components as well. Okay, so first you're going to pick a culture that you identify with. You're going to select an object that represents that culture. So you could either show that object in your speech, or you could create a PowerPoint slide for it. The next thing is you're going to create an outline that represents your thoughts and main points into your speech, okay? Now, I've provided an outline for this speech. You don't have to use this outline, but I do find it helpful, and I will also send this outline in the announcements. So in this outline for the informative speech on culture, there's an introduction, a body, conclusion. Introduction are kind of the same points, the same format as you did in your This Is Me speech. Now the body, I provide you some different main points you could use. You don't have to use them, and you don't have to use them in that order, but sometimes students are like, I really don't know what to talk about in this speech. So here are some points. You could give your definition or a formal definition of culture. You could describe how this cultural artifact is used or represented in that culture. You could describe the culture itself. You could describe how being involved in the culture has changed or impacted your identity. And you could describe how that specific cultural artifact is unique or special to you. So maybe that cultural artifact that you're using is an heirloom or passed down from generation to generation, etc. So as I mentioned before, these are just some tips for your speech. You don't have to use them all. You don't have to use them in that order, but just something in case you can't think of enough supporting materials. And then finally, you want to have a conclusion, right? So similar to your This Is Me speech, review the main points that you talked about and end memorably. Okay? Now, the speech is a 4 to 6 minute speech, so make sure that you practice to be in the time frame. If you are under 4 minutes, you don't have enough substance, and if you're over 6 minutes, you're blabbing on, and I most likely won't listen to over 6.5 minutes. So make sure you're in that time frame. Okay, we're going to submit our speech just as we did with our This Is Me through Speech Studio. And also, don't write out your entire speech and read it to us in your video. Practice with note cards. Refer back to the different videos I've given you on tips on public speaking to do well in this speech. Okay, so the speech is worth 90 points. 30 points is your outline, and 60 points is the actual video. Make sure that you do turn in both. Some students forget the outline, although they have an amazing speech. And below, you could look at the rubric as well. Okay, so now moving on to the next assignment, which is your group presentation. Now, give me 1 second to find it here on Canvas. And group presentation. Now, after exam one, based on who completed and passed exam one, I will put you into small groups and you will see them in the people tab of Canvas. And there's also directions here on how to access your groups, okay? Now, in this assignment, you're gonna create a 15 to 20 minute PowerPoint presentation with embedded narration, okay, on a topic revolving a specific problem. First come, first serve. So make sure that your topic gets approved by me. So have a group leader or someone in your group email me your topic. Your topic should be current and your topic should be relevant to your audience, which is myself and your classmates. Okay. Now, this paragraph just talks about the different usage of persuasive appeals and supporting materials, okay? So you just want to make sure that you do enough research and you have a lot of substance in your group presentation. The guidelines also give you a nice little structure to follow your group presentation. You don't have to follow this to a T, but it is helpful to stay in that structure. Now, as I mentioned, I'll create a group discussion board for each group that you could communicate in. You're also welcome to use Google Chat or other forms of communication. I would say using group discussion with Canvas is helpful, just in case there's someone that isn't pulling their weight. I could review basically what you guys have worked on, what you've decided to do. Okay, so if someone's not pulling your weight, that's like a good, kind of a good track record of what you guys have progressed in the project. Couple other things to mention is that everyone in the group should be working on research and constructing the PowerPoint slides and constructing the presentation, but it is kind of awkward if you have 5 or 6 different people narrating the presentation. So maybe you just want to assign one person to narrate the PowerPoint slides and the whole presentation itself. Okay. Now, just a couple other tips. You see a lot of different comments. Here's an example group presentation that you guys should watch. Information on finding your group. And I'm going to go down up here to basically the timeline and the grading, right? So there's a lot of things connected to this group presentation. You have the group charter, which is basically one person from your group will turn this in before you start your project. It's basically your plan for completing the project. You have the group presentation itself, which is worth 90 points. And then after the group presentation, you have 2 individual assignments. The individual group evaluation, where you'll evaluate your other group members, and then the role reflection essay, in which you'll evaluate your role in the group project, okay? So just check the syllabus and for the specific due dates, and of course, I will remind you those in our weekly announcements, okay? And then over here, you have the rubric as far as what you'll be held accountable for in this group presentation, right? And I usually do look forward to these group presentations because your classmates do pick these like really interesting topics. Now, all right, moving on. We're going to talk about the final assignment, which is the interpersonal communication film paper. So let's go down. Let me see where I could find this assignment. Going down. Where are we? There we go. Module 9. Okay, so in the assignment, basically, you're going to select a film and apply a few different interpersonal communication theories to the relationships in that film. So here's the brief, here's the instructions on how you're going to structure your paper. You're going to have an introduction, and you could read what are the components of the introduction, briefly describing the film, and then also the main points that you're going to talk about in the paper. The next part of the paper, you're going to choose one theory of relational development and apply it to the characters in the film. And these are some of the example theories that you could use, okay? The next paragraph, you're going to pick one theory of relationship maintenance and obviously apply it to the film. And these are some examples of the different relationship maintenance theories. And then you have a conclusion. Okay, so basically, what was your paper about, what you learned from it, and all that good stuff. So you could go into detail more specifically, the content of your paper. An important note that this is not a review or summary of the film. Okay, so many people will just summarize the film, and I could find that on IMBD. The goal of this paper is to apply theories and concepts of interpersonal communication to the characters in the film. So if you just tell me what the movie is about, I could find that easily on the internet, or if I've seen the movie before, and you're not going to do very well on this paper. A couple things to also focus on in this paper is make sure that your paper is 3 to 4 pages long and it's in the appropriate MLA or APA format. So if you're not familiar with any of those formats, I suggest you check out OWL Purdue. I'll go to that website in a second. Make sure you cite your sources. So if you don't properly cite your research, have a works cited or reference page, do in-text citations, you can't get an A on this paper. So make sure that you cite your resources, and you're going to have at least 2, and that includes the textbook and the film itself. You want to submit your paper in a Microsoft Word format or Word file. So make sure you submit a Microsoft Word file, okay? And then finally, pick a fun film, and pick a film that has dynamic character relationships in it, okay? Here are some examples of films, but I do not want you to use those films. I've heard way too much about those films. They're pretty boring. I want you to be creative and select your own film. So make sure you do select your own film and go from there. Now, and this paper is worth 90 points, so it's a pretty chunk. And down here you see the grading rubric for it. Okay. And quickly, just because I have a couple minutes left, I'm going to show you OWL Purdue. And this is a good website to check out if you need help with APA or MLA format. Okay, you don't need that advertisement. All right, so in this tutorial, I talked about the 3 main assignments that we have kind of leading to the end of the semester. I would just suggest that you stay on these assignments. You don't wait till the last minute, and you fully read the directions and the rubrics that are up on Canvas.